All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're taking a look at Friedrich Nietzsche's Human All Too Human. And let me tell you, this is not a book that's meant to make you feel comfortable. Nope. It's designed to set you free. Think of it as a philosophical stick of dynamite, ready to just blast away everything you thought you knew for sure.
And it all kicks off with this single, explosive question. You see, Nietzsche heard people whispering this about his work, that he was dragging everything grand and divine down to our messy, human level. But instead of backing down, he grabbed onto it and made it the heart of his whole project. What if, he asks, our most cherished ideals, things like truth, morality, even God, what if they aren't gifts from on high, but are actually just our own all-too-human inventions?
Now, to really get how incredibly radical this was, you have to picture the world he was writing in. Philosophy back then was built on what everyone thought were these absolutely unshakable foundations.
And here you can see the massive difference. On one side, you've got the old-school metaphysical philosophy. It was all about hunting for timeless, eternal truths that exist somewhere beyond our day-to-day experience. This idea of the thing in itself. It saw concepts like good and evil as these pure, absolute opposites that came from some kind of miraculous origin. But then on the other side, you've got Nietzsche's game-changing idea, historical philosophizing. For him, nothing is eternal. Everything, our ideas, our morals, our very sense of truth, it all has a history, it all evolved.
So, how in the world do you study that evolution? Well, Nietzsche came up with this brilliant metaphor, a chemistry of our ideas and feelings. Just like a chemist breaks a substance down into its basic elements, he wanted to break down our highest concepts into their raw psychological ingredients. And what did he find at the bottom of it all? Not divinity, but things like egoism, error, passion, and even self-deception.
The effect of an idea like this wasn't just a little shakeup. Oh no, this was a full-on philosophical earthquake, and it sent cracks right through the bedrock of Western thought.
And this quote right here is the epicenter. If everything has evolved, if there are no eternal facts or absolute truths just handed down to us, then philosophy can't keep pretending to deal in absolutes. It has to become historical. It has to be willing to dig into the messy, complicated, all-too-human origins of our beliefs.
And you gotta understand, this wasn't just some abstract thought experiment for him. He was being intentionally provocative. He called his own books a school of distrust. He was daring his readers, challenging you and me to really question the comfortable opinions and customs we live by every single day.
This brings us to the real story of the book. Human, All Too Human, isn't just a jumble of brilliant ideas. It's a kind of roadmap for a psychological journey. It's the story of the painful, difficult, but ultimately amazing process of becoming what he calls a free spirit.
So the journey starts with a person who's totally bound by tradition, authority, and duty. But then, bam, the great liberation hits. Nietzsche says it's like an earthquake that violently tears your soul away from everything it used to love and believe in. This sudden freedom leads to this phase of, well, dangerous curiosity. The mind wants to go everywhere, question everything, and basically tear down all the statues it used to worship. And out there, in this new wilderness, you're faced with the most terrifying questions you can imagine. Your old moral compass is shattered, so you start to wonder, what if what I thought was good is actually just a sneaky form of evil? What if God is just an elaborate trick? What if everything is a lie? But, and this is so important, this phase of just tearing everything down isn't the final destination. Nietzsche sees it as a kind of necessary sickness, a fever you have to break. What comes after is a long, slow period of recovery, of convalescence. The spirit has to learn how to stand on its own 2 feet without the crutches of old beliefs and find a new, deeper kind of health. The end of this incredible journey is what he calls the matured free spirit. Now, this isn't some nihilist who believes in nothing, not at all. This is someone who has mastered themselves. They see the world with a broad perspective, they're strong enough to live their life as an experiment, and they're finally free from the simple traps of love and hate, yes and no. They found a real, profound freedom within themselves. So, let's get our hands dirty for a second. How does Nietzsche actually use this chemistry of his to take apart our most deeply held moral ideas?
Well, he argues that when you really look at the history of our so-called virtues, you don't find some divine blueprint. What you find are these base ingredients. Our morality, he claims, is really just built on a long history of mistakes, psychological needs, our fears, and our passions. All this messy stuff that we've conveniently forgotten about and dressed up in pretty, noble language.
And that, of course, leads to a pretty devastating question, doesn't it? If the very foundations of our moral systems are shot through with errors and self-deception, what does that say about the systems themselves? What are they really worth?
Just take the idea of responsibility. Nietzsche traces its history. Way back, we only judged an action by its consequences. Did it cause harm or not? Simple. Then we got more sophisticated and started judging the motive behind the action. After that, we started judging the person's entire character. But Nietzsche says we stopped one step too soon. We failed to see that a person's character is itself just a necessary result of everything that came before them. Their biology, their upbringing, their whole history.
Which brings him to this absolutely stunning conclusion. If no one is ultimately responsible for who they are, since their nature is just the product of a million different causes, then the very act of judging someone morally is, at its root, unjust. I mean, that idea just completely flips our entire legal and moral world on its head.
Now you might be thinking, this is all just dusty 19th century philosophy, but honestly, the questions Nietzsche is asking have never been more urgent than they are right now.
He saw, way back then, that the belief in a God who gives the world a purpose was starting to fade. And he left us with this enormous challenge. If there's no divine plan, no cosmic script for us to follow, then humanity itself has to pick up the pen. We have to be the ones to create our own meaning, our own purpose, on a global scale.
I mean, just think about our lives today. We live in an age of information overload, shifting values, fake news. Nietzsche's fierce skepticism about so-called eternal truths feels incredibly modern. He's pushing us to ask, okay, where did my beliefs actually come from? Are they really mine? Or are they just things I've inherited without thinking?
So, in the end, Human All Too Human leaves each of us with this deeply personal challenge. The journey of the free spirit is destructive, for sure, but it's also profoundly creative. By clearing away all the old rubble, it hands us this terrifying but also exhilarating freedom to build our own values from the ground up. So the ultimate question isn't what is true, but what will you make true in your own life?
This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.